Dark. You know that?
Hello and welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm CJ.
And I'm Chip.
And boy, do we have a show for you this week. We have two major issues which we're going to talk about, and I think many of you are very familiar with it already. This week we had a public hearing, public meeting, whatever you want to call it, on the landfill. And it was the biggest joke I've ever seen in my life. As we like to say around here, lies, lies, and more lies. But I love the way this was set up. It was supposed to be a meeting set up for the public to attend. It was held at the Bristol Community College Faculty Dining Room. And Carol Fiola, deliberately or unintentionally, however the case may be, looked more deliberate to me, set up the room for 15 people. Now when the press, including Spindle City Straight Talk, and the Herald News, WSAR, and other press media were present, we were told prior to the start of the meeting, in a very firm and authoritative voice, that this meeting will start at 1. It will end at 2:28. There will be no questions from the viewing people. There'll be no questions from the press. After the meeting is closed, then you can approach the people that were in the meeting and you can ask them questions. Well, what was the sense of having a public meeting? A little bitter because it had to be public? A little bitter because the people of Fall River were upset? I don't know. But I will tell you one thing. Rep. Fiola did not do herself justice in doing this. To me, it looked like a floor show. This was political grandstanding at the best. Why? Because it's an election year. Ms. Fiola wanted to take the lead on this to make it look like I'm doing something. Well, Ms. Fiola, I don't think you're doing anything. I don't know. Chipper, you were there. What do you think about what happened at this meeting?
Well, obviously it was not a meeting. That's the first thing. You know, a meeting, town meetings and meetings have always been where there's a discourse between the public and the individuals concerned. It was a public hearing. The only thing the public and the press, which we were there as press and also as taxpayers, got to do was sit down and listen to political posturing. The mayor began by basically asking questions that only were to try to duck responsibility. Every question was not about the hazards to the public, to the people of Fall River, if there can be contamination, if there is contamination. All his questions were about when did this begin, so he can turn and say, well, it happened before my administration. But that, again, doesn't excuse him from the burden of protecting the people of Fall River. It was a dog and pony show.
And a poor one at that. You know, some of the things that really bothered me a lot was, as we reported in the previous episode, a citizens group here in Fall River filed a complaint with the Environmental Protection Agency, which is the federal government, not the state. And in that complaint, they stated very clearly that they felt that there was a lot of shadowing of this situation, a lot of hiding and not being truthful in the information being presented. I followed up on that with the EPA the day of this hearing, based upon a statement made by a DEP, the State Department of Environmental Protection official, who was the regional solid waste director, and who was Mark Dakers, who said very clearly that when asked the question about, is the EPA apprised of this? He says the EPA is very much aware of what is happening and what we have done here. As a matter of fact, I have to return a phone call to the EPA. I spoke with the EPA that day after this meeting, which was this past Monday, which was the 10th of March. And the EPA said they've been trying to reach DEP twice a day since that complaint was filed, which I believe was approximately 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. Twice a day for almost 2 weeks? and you haven't returned a phone call? Are you trying to hide something? Tell me. I mean, I want to know. And we wanted to ask that question. And they couldn't give us any answers afterwards because they didn't want to. But I do know that I asked, how long is the EPA going to take before they do something? Because I had apprised them of Mr. Dacre's comment at the meeting. And they said, well, not too much longer. We're going to do something. We're going to get a phone call back. Because they're hiding this. They don't want anyone to know. This is like backdoor deals and shadow government. I don't appreciate that. What do you think?
Well, I think there was a lot of contradictory testimony there. I think Mr. Dacus also said that he received a call from EPA and had not returned that call. They also made some comments. I spoke after the meeting. I spoke to Phil Weinberger, the regional director of the Southeast EPA, who made a statement at the beginning of that meeting that said they have been aware of this problem for many years, but they haven't done anything about it. And this is a quote, because they thought some of the parties would come forward. And the fact is, nobody came forward until they were pressed by people like us and other people in the community to do something about it. The fact is that this pollution has been well documented for decades, and no one reported it. And the DEP actually basically said, look, if they don't report it, as far as we're concerned, we're not going to do anything about it, which to me is absolutely unconscionable. And this is why the EPA has to get involved. When the Department of Environmental Protection says they won't protect us unless somebody asks them to protect us, even though they're aware of a problem, until someone reports it physically, even though they're aware of it, it really didn't happen. It's like if a tree falls in the forest, has it made a sound?
Well, it's interesting because, again, we know this has been happening. We know it's there. They know it's there. And when they were asked by members of the press, especially from WSAR, and they spoke directly about the statements that were made on air and are available on the WSAR website from an anonymous gentleman who said he dumped these barrels, and there's probably thousands of them there. They said, well, unless he comes forward and signs an affidavit, we're not going to do anything. Because why do we want to look for something to have more problems? So again, this is bury my head in the sand. I get paid a lot of money, and I'm not going to do anything. Sounds a lot like what's going on in Fall River all the time. It's a very familiar story for this city. Pay me, I'm not here. And you know, it's time for the people of Fall River, the citizens, to stand up and arise. Because I think one of the biggest statements they made at this meeting, which was funny in a way, but it wasn't, was that there's no probability that the city water supply will in any way be affected by these contaminations. By the contaminants, it won't possibly go towards the water supply because the contaminants are going to flow the other way because the groundwater flows the other way. Okay, well, when Freetown asked about theirs, oh, there's no way your groundwater is going to get contaminated. Why? The groundwater you're saying is flowing that way. Well, there's a sheet of bedrock under there, so it can't get through that. How do we know where that sheet of bedrock ends? What about bedrock cracking? Fishes forming. How do we know? How do we know where it's going to go? And it's a known fact that underwater streams, groundwater streams, do change direction. It takes years and years, but they do change direction. And we all know that Mother's Brook has been contaminated for years. Where did that come from? Seeing that that runs right behind the landfill. And that dumps into the Taunton River. So maybe there's something there. It's interesting. There are these, what they call wells and pits that they've made around the landfill and around this area to test the groundwater and the surface water, which at first they said there's no surface water. Then they said, we found some contaminants on the surface water. I thought that was a real, I mean, it was like almost in the same sentence. So it was really interesting. But they don't want, none of the pits and none of the wells, the testing wells, are owned or maintained by DEP. They're maintained by BFI or the city of Fall River. And then the city of Fall River looked at them like, we have those wells in place? They never said it, but they kind of looked like, we do? Where? I don't know. Is this malfeasance? Is this ignorance? Or is this just, we don't care, we're getting paid?
Well, I think it's all of the above. The fact is that, the statements are clear. They've known about this pollution for decades. They also made the statement, I'm reading from my notes, that they're still in the information gathering stages. And if we know about hazardous materials dumping for decades, we also know that there are always seismic shifts underground, and things can change, and the way things leach can change over the course of years. And a statement that's up now that was made by Mr. Dacus, Mark Dacus, was anything and everything could have went into there. And that means pertaining to the city dump. Everything and anything, and that's a direct quote. So if we have an agency that's commissioned to protect us, that says that everything and anything could have been dumped there prior to the new regulations about dumping, every type of hazardous material conceivable could be in our landfill, and they're still in the information gathering phase, they are not doing their job. And it's time for the citizens, as my co-host CJ says, to rise up and get the EPA involved, and let's get the federal government down. Maybe they care, because apparently the state agencies are far too close to the political arm of government.
It's like a horror story. It really is. It's like, we've made comments about this several times in jest, and I've made it to a couple of city councilors, and I said, maybe it's time for us to call Erin Brockovich. Because, this isn't a love canal, but who knows what it's going to be. And it was very interesting also to know that Mr. Weinberg said very clearly that we had, and this is after the statements that they've known it's been going on for years and years, we had no idea this was happening until it was brought to our attention by Mike Mioza. So here's the gentleman who is like the big shot. He's Dacre's boss. And he says he didn't know until it was brought to the attention by Councilor Mioza. One city councilor fighting the battle. Okay? That's scary. And when the people were there, it was unbelievable because there were so many neighborhood group representatives there. There were people, they started taking the chairs from the faculty dining area so they could sit down, and none of them could ask a question. Talk about trying to close out the public in a public meeting. I don't know what's going to happen with this, but we got to stay on top of it. And I know that we've got so many issues here in Fall River, but at what point do we say enough is enough? It gets to be very, very frustrating that we can't get straight answers from public officials. When I had a conversation with Mr. Dacres on the phone several weeks ago, he was more than forthcoming with the information. Then he asked me what agency I was with, and I said, I'm not, I'm a reporter. And he says, you have to go through the press office, and he hung up. And at that point on, everybody who called, whether they're press, city council, whoever it was, you have to go through this office. They were all redirected. He didn't want to take any more phone calls. What do you have to hide, Mr. Dacres? What does the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection have to hide? What's in the ground? Let us know. Find it and clean it up. Because all they want to do, and while it's not cheap, it is the cheapest way out for them, is they just want to cap it. And to understand what capping is, it means they put plastic over the top, they dump dirt on top of it, and they put a well in there to make sure it doesn't change. Isn't that a great solution? Don't you think it's a great solution, Chip?
Well, it sounds like it's the old finger in the dike, and as I said, we don't know, and the fact is there may not be any contamination, but can we take that chance? Can we poison our children and our children's children somewhere down the road because something has leached beyond that area? They're talking about dumping that goes back into the 50s. And we don't even know what the leaching, where things leached in the 50s. Things have changed. Things get diverted by natural catastrophes, by seismic shifts, by many things, by construction. Things get changed, and the way it travels changes. So the fact is, we have to be 100% sure, especially in light of the fact that at one time in this country, there were virtually no regulations, and they could dump pesticides and insecticides and every other pollutant in the world in a regular dump. So the fact is, Fall River has never been well known for its ability to monitor anything. So the fact is, for our own safety and for what we pay our tax dollars for these agencies, we have to ensure that we err on the side of caution.
You know, this isn't a funny statement, but, you know, Fall River has always been viewed as the armpit or worse of Massachusetts. Well, we've kind of moved up the ladder or down the ladder, and now we are definitely truly the toilet or the cesspool. And that's not a funny statement, it's just being factual, it's reality. And with that, we can't do any more on it. So I would suggest you contact the Mass DEP and the federal EPA and let them know that you're tired of all the hiding and all the devious behavior, and you want a full-out investigation. You want proof positive that your drinking water is safe now and forever. Now on to our next major issue, which had a huge outpouring last night at the City Council chamber, so much so that Chip and I had to be there till after 9 o'clock before we could speak, and they still hadn't finished their Finance Committee meeting. The Fall River Fire Department. An interesting scenario for many people. And with our resident expert about the Fall River Fire Department, I'm going to turn this over to Chip.
Well, thank you, CJ. Well, it was it was quite the education. It was more like a comedy show to listen to our new city administrator and our treasurer completely attempt to mislead the city council and the people of Fall River. They didn't have their facts straight, their numbers straight. They basically lied, but the good thing about it was they ultimately were exposed. The fact is that this mayor, Mayor William Flanagan, has said that we have great public safety and that he's responsible for this public safety and he is committed to public safety. Well, in my presentation to the council yesterday, I made it clear that since he's been in office, we have not had one additional firefighter put on the fire department that was funded by city money. As a matter of fact, and the city administrator was wrong in her figures, she said that 153 number, which is a leftover from the career administration. That's the number that was there with the career administration. They have funded 153, but actually last year they funded only 141. So the fact is, if anything, he's actually reduced it. So when they're going back to 153, they're only going back to what was there when he took office. So it proves one thing. There was absolutely no commitment to this city for the fire department. There has never been a commitment. As a matter of fact, he siphoned money off, and we told them, and the council, some of our councilors were very clear that we have to find the money in the budget because we're looking at a stormwater increase. Now they're going to talk about tax increases and gutting healthcare, all because our mayor does nothing but create jobs, spend money. It is more than fiscal irresponsibility. It transcends that into malfeasance. The fact is that we have a letter from a congressional delegation that was sent to the mayor when he was begging for money again. I won't read the entire letter, but I will. This is the important part of the letter to me. And this is from United States Senator Edward Markey, United States Senator Elizabeth Warren, Joseph P. Kennedy III, member of Congress, and William Keating, member of Congress. After they go on and tell them basically, look, you've gotten enough grants and you're probably not going to get another one, but it says, However, we respectfully request to be made aware of the city's plan of action in the event there are no additional federal funds available, which is highly probable given this late stage of process. We also request that the city make us aware of long-term plans to ensure that it maintains an adequate staffing level beyond 2014. The answer to those questions, and I am going to call my congressmen and my senators, and I urge all of you to do it, to tell them that this mayor and this city has had no plan over the last 4 years. Absolutely no plan, and there is absolutely no plan going forward except to take more money out of your pocket while we have $9,000 doors and showers, and we spend money and don't spend it on priorities. These are essential services. Like you, I have to make sure I pay a mortgage so I can have a roof over my head. I have to pay my gas bill so I don't freeze to death. Those are my essential services. Our essential services are police and fire. And while we're on the subject, another bomb. And CJ, we had a little technical difficulty. We didn't have a chance to talk before. So CJ is going to hear this, because as I was walking into the studio, I received a call from a city official to give me the news before the news. And remember, you heard it here on Spindle City Straight Talk before the news media and before the mayor calls his press conference. I was told that we now have to make up $1 million of a grant for the police department. So again, Mayor Failagain has attempted to subsidize rather than supplement our public safety while he spends our tax dollars on raises for his friends. And now they're going to try to use the oldest con in the world to get a Prop 2.5 override. The public safety is going to be jeopardized. Well, before you do, I want to see every bit of fat cut out of the budget. It's an atrocity that this has happened, and the individuals should be held accountable who are responsible. And the buck stops on the 6th floor.
True, but as we've heard at the city council meeting, that was prior to my administration. I have no idea. I have no idea whatsoever. I'm sorry, I have no information on that. Even our treasurer, who's only been on the job just about 16 months, didn't have a lot of the information. During an election year, and I said this at the city council meeting, during an election year, you give them everything. They gave the fire department a 7.5% pay increase. Not that they don't deserve it, but he did that so he could get the entire fire department on his side and their families to make sure he got elected. Just like he gave the boots to DCM. And now that the election's over, I'm done. I have no intention. We're going to lay you off. We're going to bring it to 153. Chief Rivera said very clearly, if they roll back to 153 firefighters, it is going to be every fire will just about be a mutual aid call. They will have one ladder and one pump. That's it. They can't handle a fire like that. So Mayor Flanagan, unlike the statements made by the city administration and by a city councilor, which was atrocious, Mayor Flanagan is cutting the fire department. And the rubber stamps on the city council, and we know who they are by their votes, can't say if the city council doesn't vote for this, they're voting to lay off firefighters. That was an atrocious comment made by Councilor Correa. And I don't care. You can come over after you've made the comment and everyone's looking at you and start making friendly chat with us, trying to smooth it over and try to make it understandable why you're doing this. But you know what? You can't. Can't pass the buck. The buck belongs to the mayor. It's that simple. I don't know what to say. I think it's atrocious. And again, you're going to look pretty soon at them calling for a Prop 2.5 override. Don't vote for it. Don't let them scare you, because that's what they want to do. Is it your night or mine?
I believe it's yours.
Oh, you don't want to do mine, that's for sure. I'm going to open this with a little personal statement, and then I'm going to go from there. I have been told by many people in this city, a few city councilors, a few press people, a few people in the public, I don't like you. You're mean. You have hateful politics. I do. Well, I guess when you tell the truth, it's hateful. And this is the problem with many people in Fall River. They all believe that if it's a bad statement, if it's factual, it's a bad statement, and therefore you're being negative. That was quoted by Councilor Correa, I don't know how many times. If we're going to move this city forward, this must be the city's new mantra. We're going to move the city forward. We got to stop being negative. We're not being negative. Numbers don't lie. Facts don't lie. And that is the problem. Many of you people watching this program, and many of the people in Fall River, don't want to hear this. They don't. They can't handle it. They want to live looking through rose-colored glasses and believing that tomorrow is a better day all the time. You know what? It was said very clearly by Councilor Mitchell, we got to stop using the credit cards. You know, we have one big fat credit card, which is a loan. We have a bunch of bonds, which is a loan. They want to give early retirement to the firefighters so they can keep firefighters on, not taking into effect that they want all that extra money to pay into the unfunded pension fund. And they want to rip them of their healthcare plans. And they want to put them in GIC because it's going to save them money. Guess what? Not going to save them a dime. Call your city councilors and tell them you're tired of the rhetoric, you're tired of the crap. Call them with all the problems you have and let them know. And if you speak to those rubber stamps on the city council, tell them, you know what, do you need an ink pad? I'll get you one.
Well said. And as far as the hatefulness, I will remind everyone again that the most contentious debate that ever took place in this country was when this country was formed as a nation. And I will also remind you what Little Eastern philosophy, what Lao Tzu said in the Tao Te Ching. If you are concerned about what people think of you, you will always be their prisoner. You just speak the truth. And Thomas Paine said, government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one. And what we have in Fall River is an intolerable government. And we have to take control, and let's say goodbye to Will Flanagan next term, but let's hold his feet to the fire for the rest of this term if we don't recall him.
Well, we got to be careful when we hold his feet to the fire. We might not have enough firefighters to put it out. Not a good joke, but very true.
But very true.
It's, you know, and it's scary that it is. You know, it seems our time just flies by so quickly, and we have so much more information to give you. But thank you for watching. Please continue to watch. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please email or call us. Thank you for watching Straight Talk. Have a great day.
Thank you. Stay involved.